Why would you do this without asking me? Amelia's voice trembled as she stormed into Damien's office, clutching the legal document. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Damien stood slowly, his dark eyes never leaving hers. Because this time I'm not preparing to lose. Welcome back to Mr. Ashbourne Golden Narratives, where love stories come alive and hearts connect across the screen. To my incredible subscribers, thank you for making this channel a place where passion meets purpose. Your support means everything. If you're new here, go ahead and click that subscribe button to join our growing family of story lovers. We'd love to have you. Now, let's get back to the story. Amelia's fingers trembled as she pressed them against the smooth edge of the pen. The contract lay before her like a gateway to salvation, its crisp white pages holding the power to transform her world. Her eyes scanned the words for the fifth time, but only the numbers truly registered. $300,000. The sum that would erase her sister's crushing medical debt. The amount that would finally allow her to return to nursing school. The key to starting over. She lifted her gaze to study the man sitting across from her. Damien Wolfe was everything she'd expected a wealthy CEO to be. Broad shoulders that filled his tailored suit perfectly, piercing gray eyes that seemed to see straight through her, and a clean-cut jawline that belonged on magazine covers. His voice carried the kind of authority that commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals. Yet he hadn't smiled once since they'd met. Do you have any questions? His tone was polite but distant, as if he was discussing stock options rather than the creation of human life. Amelia could sense his preference for silence, the way he measured each word before speaking. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Just sign where indicated, Damien continued, sliding the papers closer to her. You'll move into the company-owned penthouse at 18th and Layton immediately after the procedure. Everything will be taken care of. The clinical nature of his words made her stomach flutter. This wasn't romance. This wasn't love. This was business. What exactly does everything include? She asked, finally finding her voice. Fresh meals delivered daily. An in-home nurse on standby. A therapist on call. 24/7 security. He listed each item like he was reading from a grocery list. You'll have access to the building's gym, pool, and rooftop garden. All medical appointments will be handled through our private healthcare system. And you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. His eyebrows lifted slightly. What about me? How often will you check in? Twice weekly. Medical updates only. His response was immediate, rehearsed. This is a professional arrangement, Miss Hart. Nothing more. The weight of his words settled over her like a heavy blanket. Professional. Clinical. Temporary. Amelia thought of her sister Emma lying in that hospital bed, her once vibrant face pale and drawn. The stack of medical bills that grew higher each day. The nursing program she'd had to abandon when Emma got sick. The baby, she said quietly. After birth, I won't see them again? Something flickered in Damien's eyes, so brief she almost missed it. That's correct. Full custody transfers to me immediately. And if complications arise during pregnancy? You'll receive the best medical care available. My team has handled similar arrangements before. Similar arrangements. The phrase made her feel like just another transaction in his portfolio. But $300,000 would change everything. Amelia picked up the pen, its weight suddenly feeling enormous in her hand. The no personal relationship clause is non-negotiable, Damien finished. This arrangement succeeds because boundaries remain clear. She looked at him, then really looked. Behind those cold gray eyes, she glimpsed something that might have been loneliness. But it vanished so quickly she wondered if she'd imagined it. I understand, she whispered. The pen touched paper. Her signature flowed across the bottom line, sealing her fate. Damien collected the documents with practiced efficiency. My assistant will contact you tomorrow with moving arrangements. The procedure is scheduled for Friday. Mr. Wolfe, she said as he stood to leave. Why me? You could have chosen anyone. He paused at the door, his hand on the handle. Because you need this to work as much as I do. Desperation breeds commitment. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Amelia alone with her decision. Tell me in the comments, would you have signed that contract? When desperation meets opportunity, sometimes we make choices that terrify us. Hit that like button if you've ever faced an impossible decision that changed everything. Life in the penthouse was exactly as Damien had promised, sterile and efficient. Amelia woke each morning to find perfectly portioned meals waiting in the kitchen, their contents carefully calibrated for optimal nutrition. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking, overlooking the city she'd once struggled to survive in from 30 floors below. But breathtaking views couldn't fill the silence. The apartment felt more like a luxurious prison than a home. Every surface was immaculate, every amenity available, yet somehow devoid of warmth. She had everything except the one thing money couldn't buy: real human connection. Damien kept his word about the visits. Twice weekly, precisely on schedule. Tuesday and Friday afternoons, he would arrive with his assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Meredith who took notes on everything. "How are you feeling?" he would ask, his eyes focused on his tablet rather than her face. "Fine," she would respond, though sometimes she wasn't. "Any unusual symptoms? Nausea? Fatigue? Some morning sickness, but the prenatal vitamins help." He would nod, make a note, ask a few more clinical questions, then leave. The entire interaction rarely lasted more than 20 minutes. But Amelia found herself looking forward to those visits anyway. They were her only connection to the outside world, her only reminder that she wasn't completely alone in this sterile bubble. During one Tuesday visit, she tried to break through his professional facade. "The baby's very active today," she said, placing her hand on her growing belly. "Would you like to feel?" Damien's fingers stilled on his tablet. "That's not necessary." "But it's your child?" "It's a medical procedure, Miss Hart. Let's keep it that way." The rejection stung more than it should have. She was carrying his child, yet he treated her like a stranger. Like a vessel. Like exactly what their contract said she was. That night, she stood by the window watching the city lights twinkle below, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The money was already helping Emma, but the emotional cost was higher than she'd anticipated. She pressed her palm against the cool glass and whispered to the growing life inside her, "I'm sorry you're being born into such a cold world, little one." But she had no idea that everything was about to change. The kitchen had become Amelia's sanctuary during the long, quiet days. She discovered that cooking, something she'd rarely had time for in her previous life, helped fill the endless hours. The act of chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, and creating something from nothing gave her a sense of purpose beyond simply existing as a human incubator. It was during one of these cooking sessions that jar of marinara sauce from the upper cabinet when the room suddenly tilted. The edges of her vision blurred, and a strange buzzing filled her ears. She gripped the counter, trying to steady herself, but the world continued to spin. "No, no, no," she whispered, but her legs gave out. Darkness swallowed her whole. When consciousness returned, she was staring at sterile white ceiling tiles that definitely weren't from the penthouse. The sharp smell of antiseptic filled her nostrils, and she could hear the steady beep of monitors nearby. Hospital. She tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pressed her back down. "Easy," a familiar voice said. "Don't try to move yet." Amelia turned her head slowly, expecting to see a nurse or doctor. Instead, she found Damien sitting in the chair beside her bed, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his tie loosened. Dark circles shadowed his eyes as if he hadn't slept in days. "Why are you here?" she whispered, her throat dry. "Because you passed out," he said, his voice tight with something she couldn't identify. "And the last time this happened, I wasn't there." Amelia blinked, confusion clouding her thoughts. "Last time?" Damien stood abruptly, running his hands through his hair. "It doesn't matter." But it did matter. She could see it in the way his jaw clenched, in the way he avoided her eyes. There was pain there, raw and fresh despite whatever time had passed. "How long have you been here?" she asked. "Since they called me." He moved to the window, his back rigid. "Dr. Morrison says it was dehydration and low blood sugar. Nothing serious, but you stayed." He didn't respond, but she watched his reflection in the window. The mask of cold professionalism had slipped, revealing something vulnerable underneath. "Mr. Wolf." "Damien," he corrected quietly. "Just Damien." The simple request felt like a breakthrough. "Damien, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." He turned to face her, and for the first time since they'd met, his eyes held genuine emotion. "I hired you to carry my child, not to collapse alone in a kitchen because I was too focused on maintaining boundaries to notice you weren't eating properly." "I was eating. Barely." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. "I had building security check the food delivery logs. You've been refusing half the meals." Amelia felt heat rise in her cheeks. "The portions were too large and I don't like eating alone all the time." It felt wasteful. "Wasteful?" His voice rose slightly. "You're growing a human being and you're worried about food waste?" "I'm not used to luxury," she snapped back, surprising herself with her boldness. "I'm used to rationing groceries and making meals last for days." I'm sorry if my poverty instincts are inconvenient for your perfect system. The words hung between them like a challenge. Damien stared at her for a long moment, then did something completely unexpected. He sat back down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Tell me about your sister. What? Emma. Tell me about her. Amelia's defenses crumbled at the gentle request. She was a dancer. Ballet. She had a full scholarship to Juilliard when she was diagnosed with leukemia. 22 years old, and suddenly her whole world collapsed. And you dropped out of nursing school to care for her. Someone had to. Amelia's voice grew thick. Our parents died in a car accident when I was 19. Emma was all I had left, and I wasn't going to let her fight alone. Damien nodded slowly. That's why you need this money to work. It's not just about the money anymore. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. I mean, it was at first. But now, there's a baby depending on me to stay healthy. To stay strong. And I've been treating you like a stranger. We are strangers. No, he said firmly. We're two people who are about to become parents. That has to count for something. The word parents sent a flutter through her chest. Not biological mother, or surrogate. Parents. Dr. Morrison wants to keep you overnight for observation, Damien continued. But when you're released, things are going to change. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to start acting like someone who actually cares about your well-being. He stood, straightening his tie. Get some rest. I'll be back tomorrow. As he reached the door, Amelia called out, Damien? He paused, looking back. Thank you. For staying. Something soft passed across his features. Get better, Amelia. We need you. We. Not I. We. The next morning, when Amelia returned to the penthouse, she immediately noticed changes. A sleek new blender sat on the kitchen counter, along with a note written in bold handwriting, 4 protein smoothies. No excuses. She opened the refrigerator to find it reorganized. Gone were the elaborate gourmet meals that had intimidated her. Instead, she found smaller, more manageable portions in glass containers, each labeled with her name and careful instructions. Breakfast, Greek yogurt with berries and granola. Lunch, grilled chicken salad with avocado. Snack, hummus with vegetables. But it was the item on her bed that made her heart skip. A small, perfectly shaped pregnancy pillow in soft lavender fabric. No note this time, but she didn't need one. The message was clear. Someone was thinking about her comfort. That evening, during what should have been a routine check-in, Damien lingered longer than usual. How are you feeling? He asked, and this time he was actually looking at her. Better. The smoothies are helping with the morning sickness. Good. He made a note on his tablet, then set it aside. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. For the way I've been handling this arrangement. You don't need to. I do. He sat down across from her, his posture less rigid than she'd ever seen it. I've been so focused on protecting myself that I forgot you're a person, not just a contract. Protecting yourself from what? The question hung in the air between them. Damien's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. From caring too much, he said finally. From getting attached to something that might not work out. And now I realize that not caring is just another way of failing. Have you ever built walls so high that you forgot how to let people in? Sometimes the very thing we do to protect ourselves ends up hurting us more. Drop a heart emoji if you believe people can change when they find the right person to change for. Over the next few weeks, Damien's visits became less clinical and more human. He would ask about her day, her comfort, her thoughts. He brought books about pregnancy and parenting, not just medical journals. He even attempted to make her tea one evening, though the result was barely drinkable. I'm better at boardroom negotiations than kitchen duties, he admitted, watching her try to hide her grimace. I could teach you, she offered. If you want. I'd like that. They began spending evenings together, starting with simple cooking lessons that gradually evolved into longer conversations. Amelia learned that Damien had grown up in foster care, that his drive for success came from a childhood of instability and abandonment. He learned that she'd always dreamed of being a nurse, that helping people heal was her calling. Why surrogacy? She asked one evening as they worked together to prepare dinner. Why not adoption? Damien's hands stilled on the vegetables he was chopping. I wanted something that was biologically mine. Something that couldn't be taken away. Things can always be taken away, she said softly. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. I'm learning that the hard way. They were standing close now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the warmth radiating from his body. The air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. "Damien," she breathed. But he stepped back, the moment broken. "I should go," he said, his professional mask sliding back into place. "It's getting late." As he gathered his things, Amelia felt a strange ache in her chest. She was beginning to understand that Damien's coldness wasn't cruelty, it was fear. He was terrified of the very thing that was happening between them. And honestly, so was she. But some things are bigger than fear. Some connections refuse to be contained by contracts and boundaries. And as she watched him leave, she knew that their carefully constructed walls were beginning to crumble, one shared moment at a time. The rhythm of their new routine had become comforting. Damien's visits stretched longer each time, evolving from clinical check-ins to genuine conversations about everything from childhood memories to future dreams. Amelia found herself looking forward to the sound of his key in the lock, the way his face would soften when he saw her, the careful way he would ask about her day. But she was about to discover that their growing intimacy was built on a foundation of secrets. It was a Thursday afternoon when Meredith arrived for an unexpected visit. Amelia had been napping on the couch, her hand resting on her now prominent belly, when the sound of voices in the hallway woke her. "Need to discuss the final arrangements," Meredith was saying as she entered with her usual armful of documents. "Not now," Damien's voice carried a warning tone. "She's resting. Damien, we can't keep postponing this conversation. The lawyers need." "I said not now, Meredith." Amelia started to announce her presence, but something in their hushed tones made her pause. She remained still on the couch, hidden from view by the kitchen island. "This is the third time, Damien," Meredith continued, her voice heavy with concern. "You need to prepare yourself for what happens if..." "If what?" Damien's voice was sharp. "If it happens again. What if she runs? What if she changes her mind about the baby?" A chill ran down Amelia's spine. "Third time? That's why I chose her," Damien said quietly. "She's strong. She won't leave." "That's what you said about Sarah," Meredith replied. "And look how that ended. This is different." "How is it different?" "You're getting attached again. I can see it in how you look at her, how you talk about her. You're making the same mistakes." Amelia pressed her hand to her mouth, afraid to breathe too loudly. "The last one ran," Damien said, his voice hollow. "The first one." "I know," Meredith said gently. "I was there, remember? I held you when you got the call about the miscarriage. I watched you blame yourself for months. Don't remind me. Someone has to. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak again, and I can't watch you go through that a third time." "This was supposed to be my last attempt," Damien admitted. "If it doesn't work, I'm done." "Then why are you making it so complicated? Why the cooking lessons? Why the personal conversations? You're supposed to be keeping distance, not what? Not caring about the woman who's carrying my child? Not making sure she's actually happy instead of just surviving? Not falling in love with her?" Meredith said bluntly. The words hit Amelia like a physical blow. "Well, was that what this was?" "I'm not," Damien started. "You are. And she's going to leave, Damien. They always do. Either something goes wrong or they realize they can't give up the baby, or they decide the money isn't worth the emotional cost. They always leave. Amelia is different. That's what you always say." Their voices began to fade as they moved toward the office, but Amelia had heard enough. She sat up slowly, her mind reeling from the revelations. Third time. 2 previous surrogates. One who miscarried. One who ran with the baby. And now her. That evening, Amelia found herself standing at the elevator, pressing the button for the roof access. She needed air, space, time to think. The rooftop garden had become one of her favorite places, a small oasis of green life high above the city chaos. She wasn't surprised to find Damien there, sitting alone on one of the benches, staring out at the city lights. "I heard you today," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. "You didn't look surprised. I figured you might have." She sat beside him, leaving space between them but close enough to see the pain etched in his profile. "Tell me about them," she said. "Amelia." "No, I need to know. I need to understand what I'm walking into." Damien was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The first surrogate, her name was Jessica. She was a graduate student, needed money for school. Everything seemed perfect. The pregnancy progressed normally, all the tests came back healthy." He paused, his hands clenching into fists. "I was in Tokyo for a business deal when it happened. She was in her second trimester and suddenly she started bleeding. By the time I got back, I'm sorry. I blamed myself. I should have been there. Should have insisted she move closer to the hospital. Should have. Should have what? Controlled biology? Controlled fate. Amelia turned to face him. Miscarriages happen, Damien. Even under the best circumstances. That's what everyone told me. But it didn't make it hurt less. What about the second one? Sarah. His laugh was bitter. She was perfect on paper. Healthy, responsible, financially motivated. The pregnancy went smoothly, no complications. But as her due date approached, she became attached. Started talking about keeping the baby, about us becoming a family. And you didn't want that? I wanted the baby. I'd spent 9 months preparing for fatherhood. But I didn't love her and she knew it. So she made a choice. He met Amelia's eyes. She disappeared 3 days before her due date. Took the baby and vanished. Did you ever find them? No. My lawyers tried, but she was smart. Changed her name, moved across the country. I received one letter months later, saying the baby was healthy and that she was sorry. Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. So you decided to try once more. This was supposed to be my last attempt, he repeated. If it didn't work, I was done trying to become a father. That's why you build all these rules. All these boundaries. I thought if I kept it purely business, if I didn't get attached, then losing wouldn't hurt as much. And now? Damien looked at her, really looked at her. Now I realize that not caring is just another kind of losing. They sat in comfortable silence, the city spreading out below them like a galaxy of possibilities. Amelia felt the baby kick, a strong flutter that made her smile. Feel that? She said, taking his hand and placing it on her belly. Damien's breath caught as the baby moved beneath his palm. Is that your daughter saying hello? Daughter? His voice was full of wonder. Dr. Morrison confirmed it yesterday. I was going to tell you, but then I overheard. She shrugged. I wanted to find the right moment. A daughter, he repeated, his hand still pressed against her belly. She's going to be beautiful, Amelia said softly. She's going to have your eyes and your determination. And your kindness. Your strength. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Amelia felt her heart racing as she looked at this man who had built walls around his heart, only to have them slowly dismantled by the very thing he was trying to protect himself from. Damien, she said carefully, what Meredith said about you falling in love. She's not wrong, he interrupted, his voice rough. I tried to keep my distance. Tried to treat this like a business transaction. But somewhere between the hospital visits and the cooking lessons and watching you bloom into this incredible mother. He turned to face her fully. I can't pretend anymore that this is just about the baby. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm terrified. Terrified that you'll leave. Terrified that something will go wrong. Terrified that I'm setting myself up for the worst heartbreak of my life. He took her hand. But I'm more terrified of missing out on whatever this could be. Amelia felt tears streaming down her face. I'm scared too. Of what? Of wanting something I was never supposed to have. Of falling for a man who hired me to carry his child. Of hoping for a future that might not exist. Well, Damien said, bringing her hand to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles, we're still here. She smiled through her tears, remembering his words from weeks ago. We're still here. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's where we start. As they sat together under the stars, Amelia felt something shift between them. The walls were crumbling, the boundaries blurring. They were no longer just a CEO and his surrogate. They were two people who had found something unexpected in the most unlikely place. They were falling in love. And for the first time since she'd signed that contract, Amelia wasn't afraid of what came next. After their rooftop confession, something fundamental shifted between them. The careful distance Damien had maintained dissolved like morning mist, replaced by a warmth that seemed to fill every corner of the penthouse. His visits became daily occurrences, no longer scheduled appointments but natural extensions of their growing connection. Good morning, he would say, arriving each day with fresh coffee for himself and herbal tea for her. How did our daughter sleep? Our daughter. The phrase sent butterflies dancing through Amelia's chest every time he said it. She's been practicing soccer in there, Amelia would reply, rubbing her belly. I think she's going to be athletic like her father. Or determined like her mother. These morning conversations became the highlight of Amelia's day. Damien would settle into the chair beside her, his tie loosened, his usual corporate armor softened by genuine affection. They would talk about everything, his latest business deals, her memories of nursing school, their hopes for their daughter's future. I've been thinking about names, Damien said one morning, pulling out his phone to show her a list he'd compiled. Oh no, Amelia laughed, scanning the screen. Seriously? Maximiliana? Theodora? These sound like names for medieval princesses. What's wrong with strong classical names? Nothing if you want our daughter to get stuffed in lockers. She took his phone and started typing. What about something simpler? Emma, like my sister. Or Grace. Or Lily. Lily, Damien repeated, testing the name. Lily Wolf. I like that. Lily Hart Wolf, Amelia corrected without thinking, then immediately flushed. I mean, if you want. Damien's smile was radiant. I want that very much. Their evenings evolved into something almost domestic. Damien would arrive after work, loosening his tie as he walked through the door like he belonged there. They would cook together, or rather, Amelia would cook while Damien attempted to help without destroying anything. How do you make chopping vegetables look so effortless? He asked one evening, watching her dice onions with practiced precision. Years of practice. When you're living on a tight budget, you learn to make every ingredient count. She glanced at his clumsy attempts at julienne carrots. Here, let me show you. She moved behind him, her hands covering his on the knife. Like this, she whispered, guiding his movements. Let the knife do the work. The simple touch sent electricity through both of them. Damien's breathing deepened, and Amelia became acutely aware of his solid warmth against her back, the way his cologne mixed with the scent of fresh herbs. Amelia, he said softly, turning in her arms. Yes. I need to tell you something. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What? I think I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered. The kiss that followed was soft and tentative, as if they were both afraid the moment might shatter. But when Amelia's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, Damien's control snapped. He deepened the kiss, his hands tangling in her hair, months of suppressed desire finally finding release. Is this okay? He asked against her lips, his hand resting protectively on her belly. More than okay, she breathed. After that night, their relationship transformed completely. Damien began staying later, sometimes falling asleep on the couch while they watched movies together. He would wake to find a blanket draped over him and breakfast waiting on the counter. You don't have to take care of me, he said one morning, finding her in the kitchen making his favorite omelet. I want to, she replied simply. Besides, you take care of me every day. That's different. That's my job. No, she said, turning to face him. A job is what you pay someone to do. This is what you do when you love someone. The word love had become easier to say, more natural. They were falling deeper every day and neither of them was fighting it anymore. Their evenings often involved chess games that became increasingly heated as their competitive sides emerged. You're cheating, Damien accused when she captured his queen with an unexpected move. I'm strategic, she corrected, grinning at his frustrated expression. I run a multi-billion-dollar company. I should be better at this. Business strategy and chess strategy are different things. She moved her rook. Checkmate. Impossible. He studied the board, then looked up at her with admiration. You're incredible. I'm just good at chess. No, you're incredible at everything. The way you handle pregnancy, the way you make me laugh, the way you see the best in people. He reached across the board to touch her hand. The way you're not afraid of me anymore. I was never afraid of you, she said softly. I was afraid of this. Of feeling too much. And now I'm afraid of not feeling enough. Their conversations deepened as they shared their most intimate secrets. Damien told her about the loneliness of his childhood, the way he'd learned to depend only on himself. Amelia shared her dreams of being a nurse, her fears about being good enough, her guilt about taking his money. I keep thinking about after, she admitted one evening as they sat together on the couch, her feet in his lap as he massaged them. After the contract is fulfilled. What happens to us? Damien's hands stilled on her feet. What do you want to happen? I want this, she said, gesturing between them. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to raise our daughter together. I want to go back to school and become a nurse while you build your empire, and I want us to meet in the middle every night over dinner. That sounds perfect, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But what if you change your mind? What if the reality of having a baby makes you remember why you built those walls in the first place? Damien moved to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. Amelia, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You and our daughter, You're not just what I want. You're what I need. One evening, Amelia found a gift waiting for her on the coffee table. It was a small black box, elegant and mysterious. "What's this?" she asked when Damien arrived. "Open it." Inside was a stethoscope, beautiful and obviously expensive. But it was the engraving that made her breath catch. Amelia Hartwolf, RN. "You said you wanted to go back to nursing school," Damien said, watching her reaction carefully. "Damien, I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's not enough," he said firmly. "I've already spoken to the admissions office at the university. They're holding your spot for next semester. Full scholarship." "What?" Tears streamed down her face. "But the baby?" "We'll have a mother who's living her dream. I'll hire the best nanny, arrange flexible childcare, whatever you need. I want you to be happy, Amelia. Not just comfortable but truly happy." She threw her arms around him, sobbing against his chest. "I love you so much. I love you too. More than I ever thought possible." That night, as they lay together on the couch, Amelia's head on Damien's chest, she felt their daughter kick against her ribs. "She's excited," Damien murmured, his hand joining hers on her belly. "She knows her daddy loves her. And her mommy." "Are we really going to do this?" Amelia asked. "Are we really going to be a family?" "We already are a family," Damien said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "We just haven't made it official yet." "Official?" But before he could answer, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. As he read it, his expression darkened. "What is it?" Amelia asked. "Nothing for you to worry about," he said, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Damien, what's wrong?" He hesitated, then showed her the message. It was from Building Security. "Amelia Hart's ex-boyfriend in lobby. Claims urgent family matter. Should we allow access?" Amelia's blood ran cold. "Tyler. But I never told him where I was living. How would he find you?" "I don't know, but he's persistent. And he's not here for anything good." Damien was already on his feet, his protective instincts fully activated. "He's not getting anywhere near you. You don't understand. Tyler doesn't give up. If he's here, it's because he wants something. And he'll do whatever it takes to get it." As if summoned by her words, Damien's phone rang. The caller ID showed the building's main desk. "This is Damien Wolf," he answered. "Mr. Wolf, sorry to disturb you, but there's a Tyler Morrison here claiming to be the biological father of Miss Hart's baby. He's demanding to see her and—" The security guard's voice trailed off. "And what?" "He's threatening to go to the media if we don't allow him access." Amelia felt the world tilt around her. Tyler had found her. And he was about to destroy everything. Damien's transformation was instant and complete. The gentle man who had been massaging her feet moments before vanished, replaced by the ruthless CEO who had built an empire through sheer force of will. His eyes turned to steel, his jaw set in a hard line. "Tell security to escort him out," Damien said into the phone, his voice deadly calm. "If he refuses to leave, call the police." "Wait," Amelia said, grabbing his arm. "He said he'd go to the media. If he causes a scene." "Let him try," Damien's voice was ice. "I have lawyers who eat publicity threats for breakfast." "You don't understand Tyler," Amelia said, panic rising in her chest. "He's manipulative. He knows exactly how to twist the truth to make himself look like the victim." As if to prove her point, the security guard's voice crackled through the phone again. "Mr. Wolf, he's refusing to leave. Says he has proof the baby is his and that Miss Hart is being held against her will." Amelia's face went white. "That's impossible. We broke up 8 months ago and I've never—" "I know," Damien said, his hand gentle on her shoulder despite the fury in his eyes. "But he's betting on creating enough doubt to cause problems." "He could ruin everything," Amelia whispered. "The contract, your reputation, the baby's future." "No," Damien said firmly. "He won't. Because I'm not going to let him." He dialed another number. "Marcus? It's Damien. I need you at my building in 10 minutes. Bring the file on Tyler Morrison." "What do you mean, what file?" "Run a background check." "No. I want every parking ticket, every late payment, every embarrassing detail of his life on my desk before he leaves this lobby." Amelia watched in amazement as Damien orchestrated a response with military precision. Within minutes, he had 3 lawyers on standby, a private investigator pulling Tyler's records, and Building Security documenting everything. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "Stay here. Stay safe. Let me handle this." "Damien, you can't just—" "Yes, I can." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle despite the storm raging in his eyes. "You're carrying my daughter. You're the woman I love. And I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone hurt you." The raw intensity in his voice sent shivers through her. This was a side of Damien she'd never seen, protective, possessive, absolutely lethal in his determination. "I'm coming with you," she said. "Absolutely not. He's here because of me. I should." "You should trust me," Damien interrupted. "Can you do that?" Looking into his eyes, seeing the absolute certainty there, Amelia nodded. "Yes." "Good. I'll be back in 20 minutes. And Tyler Morrison will never bother you again." Damien kissed her forehead, then headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, Amelia caught a glimpse of his face, cold, calculating and absolutely ruthless. She'd never found him more attractive. 25 minutes later, Damien returned to find Amelia pacing the living room, her hands protectively cradling her belly. "Is he gone?" she asked immediately. "He's gone," Damien confirmed, loosening his tie. "And he won't be back." "What did you do?" "I had a conversation with him about the consequences of making false claims and threatening innocent people." "Damien, tell me you didn't." "I didn't touch him," he said quickly. "I didn't need to. Turns out Mr. Morrison has been behind on his rent for 3 months, has 2 outstanding warrants for unpaid traffic violations, and recently lost his job for harassment of a female coworker." "How did you find all that out so quickly?" "Money and connections are powerful tools when used properly." He moved to stand in front of her, his hands resting on her shoulders. He was bluffing, Amelia. He had no proof of anything because there was nothing to prove. He was just a desperate man trying to exploit a situation he thought he could manipulate. "He won't." "But what if he goes to the media?" Damien's smile was sharp. "Because I made him an offer he couldn't refuse." "What kind of offer?" "The kind that involves him relocating to another state with a clean slate and a fresh start, provided he signs a non-disclosure agreement and never contacts you again." Amelia stared at him. "You paid him to leave?" "I invested in his absence," Damien corrected. "There's a difference. You can't just throw money at every problem. Watch me." His expression softened as he pulled her closer. "Amelia, I told you, no one touches you. No one threatens you. Not while I'm breathing." The intensity in his voice made her knees weak. "You really meant that?" "I meant every word." His hands moved to frame her face. "You and our daughter are everything to me. I will protect you from anything and anyone who tries to hurt you. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then." The words hung between them, charged with promise and passion. Amelia felt her heart racing as she looked at this man who had just moved mountains to protect her. "Damien," she whispered. "Yes. Thank you." "For what?" "For being the kind of man who fights for what he loves." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, as if he was trying to pour all his feelings into the connection between them. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I was so scared," Amelia admitted, her forehead resting against his. "Not just of Tyler but of losing this. Losing you." "You're not going to lose me," Damien said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." "But what if something else happens? What if?" "Then we'll handle it together," he interrupted. "No more facing things alone. No more keeping secrets. We're a team now." "A team?" "A family," he corrected. "And families protect each other." That evening, as they sat together on the couch, Amelia felt a shift in their dynamic. The threat from Tyler had been neutralized, but more importantly, she had seen Damien's true nature. He wasn't just a wealthy CEO who happened to care about her. He was a man who would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. "I keep thinking about what you said," she murmured, her head resting on his shoulder. "What part?" "About burning the city down to protect me. Did you mean it?" "Every word." "That's either very romantic or very terrifying. Can't it be both?" She laughed, feeling the tension of the day finally leaving her body. "I love you, Damien Wolf." "I love you too, Amelia Hart." "Hart Wolf," she corrected. "Not yet," he said, his voice suddenly serious. "But soon." "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, he shifted beside her, reaching for something in his jacket pocket. When he turned back, he was holding a small velvet box. "Damien," she breathed. "I know this isn't how we planned it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know we started as strangers with a contract. But somewhere along the way you became my everything." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, elegant, timeless, perfect. "Amelia Hart, will you marry me? Not because of the contract, not because of the baby, but because I can't imagine my life without you." Tears streamed down her face as she looked at this man who had started as a cold stranger and become her whole world. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Amelia felt the last of her fears disappear. This was real. This was forever. Have you ever had someone fight for you the way Damien fought for Amelia? True love isn't just about the good times, it's about having someone who will stand between you and the world when things get tough. Comment below if you believe in love that protects and fights for what matters most. That night, as they held each other close, Amelia felt their daughter kick against her ribs. "She approves," Damien murmured, his hand joining hers on her belly. "She knows her parents love each other, and that they're going to love her more than life itself." "We're really doing this," Amelia said wonderingly. "We're really going to be a family." "We already are," Damien replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "We just made it official." The morning sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Amelia sat at Damien's mahogany desk, her fingers tracing the edge of the leather portfolio Marcus had left behind. 8 months pregnant, she moved carefully, one hand supporting her lower back as she reached for the documents that would change everything. The will was thick, formal, filled with legal language that made her head spin. But one line stood out like a beacon in the darkness. "To Amelia Claire Morrison, who has brought light back into my life, I leave the entirety of my estate, including Morrison Industries, all properties and financial holdings." Her breath caught. The date on the document was 3 weeks ago, long before their relationship had shifted from contract to something deeper. Before the hand-holding, before the kiss, before he'd started staying for dinner and talking about their future. "You're up early." Damien's voice came from the doorway, warm and sleep-roughened. He wore only pajama pants, his hair mussed, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. Amelia didn't turn around. "Marcus left something for you yesterday. I thought it might be important." "Amelia. You changed your will." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she set the document down. 3 weeks ago. Before any of this happened between us." She heard his sharp intake of breath, felt the shift in the room's energy. Slowly, she turned to face him, searching his expression for answers she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. "I can explain." "Can you?" She stood carefully, one hand on her belly. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been planning this all along. The kindness, the gifts, the way you've been looking at me, was any of it real?" Damien stepped into the room, his hands raised as if approaching a wounded animal. "Everything between us has been real. Every moment, every touch, every word. But you decided I was worth your entire fortune before we even had our first real conversation." Her voice cracked. "How is that possible unless this was all some elaborate plan?" "It wasn't a plan." His voice was raw, desperate. "It was hope." The words hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. Amelia's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "Hope for what?" Damien ran a hand through his hair, pacing to the window before turning back to her. "Hope that maybe, just maybe, you'd be different. That you'd see past the money and the reputation and the mistakes I've made. That you'd stay not because you had to, but because you wanted to. You could have asked me. Could I?" His laugh was bitter. "Amelia, look at us. Look at how we started. A business transaction. A woman desperate enough to carry a stranger's child for money. How was I supposed to know if your feelings were real or just practical?" The accusation hit her like a physical blow. "You think I'm with you for your money? I think you're the first person in 10 years who's looked at me like I'm worth something beyond my bank account." His voice broke. "And I was terrified that if you knew about the will, you'd either run away thinking I was trying to trap you, or stay for the wrong reasons." Amelia pressed her palms against her temples, trying to process his words. The baby kicked, a sharp reminder of the life growing between them, literally and figuratively. "So you decided to make me your heir without telling me, provide for you, without asking for our daughter. I wanted to know that if something happened to me, you'd never have to worry about money again. That you'd never have to make the desperate choice you made when you walked into my office. But that's not your choice to make." The words exploded out of her. "My life, my future, my choices, they're mine, Damien. You can't just decide what's best for me and then manipulate me into it." "I wasn't manipulating. Weren't you?" She moved toward him, her eyes blazing. "The gifts, the tenderness, the way you've been courting me, was any of it genuine, or were you just trying to make sure your heir would be happy with the arrangement?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Damien's face went pale and for a moment she thought he might not answer at all. Then he moved, closing the distance between them in 2 quick strides. His hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "I never asked to love you," he whispered, his voice breaking. But I do. God help me, I love you so much it terrifies me. The will, the gifts, the way I look at you, it's all because I love you. Because I want you in my life forever, not as my employee or my surrogate, but as my partner. My equal. My choice. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she stared into his eyes, seeing the truth there, raw, vulnerable, and completely overwhelming. I love you too, she whispered back. But love isn't enough if we can't trust each other. If we can't be honest about what we want and what we're afraid of. Then let me be honest. His thumbs wiped away her tears. I'm afraid you'll leave. I'm afraid I'll lose you the way I lost everything else that mattered. And I'm afraid that this, he gestured between them, is too good to be real. Amelia closed her eyes, feeling the weight of his fears in her own. When she opened them again, her voice was steady. I'm not going anywhere, Damien. But we need to start over. As equals. As partners. No more secrets, no more decisions made without each other. What about the will? She smiled through her tears. We'll figure it out. Together. But first, you need to trust me enough to let me choose you freely, not because you've arranged my life to make it convenient. Damien's smile was tremulous but genuine. I can do that. I want to do that. Good. She reached up to touch his face. Because I've already chosen you, Damien Morrison. Not your money, not your company, not your grand gestures. Just you. And when he kissed her this time, it tasted like truth,